There's a shift that happens to pretty much every man after 35, but almost nobody talks about it. It's not just the body that changes. The way you think, the way you see success, relationships, and even time itself starts transforming in surprising ways. And the funny thing is, a lot of these changes only really click once you actually live through them. The first one usually ends up being the one that changes all the rest. 1. He stops chasing validation. After 35, a lot of guys notice a quiet shift that almost nobody mentions. They stop waking up thinking about how they'll be perceived by others and start asking themselves whether what they're doing actually makes sense for them. It's like a switch flips without warning. That constant need to impress people, prove your worth, or chase approval starts losing its grip. And funnily enough, this shift usually brings a sense of freedom a lot of guys have never felt before. In practice, this shows up in ways that are simple but run deep. A guy who used to buy a car just to turn heads might start choosing something reliable and comfortable instead, without caring whether anyone thinks it's less impressive. Another guy stops accepting invites to events he never wanted to go to in the first place, just so he doesn't come off as antisocial. He gets it. Saying no to what doesn't matter is really saying yes to his own peace. What used to feel like missing out now turns out to be a win in time, energy, and peace of mind. This shift also changes how he looks at success. Instead of measuring his worth by what coworkers, neighbors, or random people online think, he starts building his own yardstick. Books like The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel or The Courage to be Disliked by Ichiro Kishimi and Fumitake Koga help explain why living for other people's approval is a battle you can never win. Slowly, he realizes real confidence is born the moment it stops depending on anyone else's applause. And once that clicks, another shift starts happening almost without him noticing. The way he chooses who's actually worth keeping around changes completely. Topic 2. His circle gets much smaller. There's a line a lot of men only really get after 35. The fuller your contact list, the shallower your connections tend to be. At this stage of life, something changes in how they see friendship. There's just not the same willingness anymore to keep relationships alive out of obligation, convenience, or nostalgia. Instead of surrounding themselves with a ton of people, they start valuing the few who actually show up when things get hard. Quantity stops being impressive, quality becomes everything. This shift happens because time takes on a whole new value. A 25-year-old guy might spend hours in empty conversations or say yes to plans just so he's not left out. By 35 or 40, he starts asking himself a simple question before giving anyone his time. Do I walk away from this better than I walked in? If the answer's no, he naturally pulls back. Not out of arrogance or coldness, but because he understands energy is a limited resource too. Just like money, it needs to be invested wisely. That's exactly why a lot of men get misread at this stage. Some friends say he's changed, gotten quieter, even distant. In reality, he's just learned to set boundaries. He'd rather have a chill dinner with 2 close friends than a party full of acquaintances. He'd rather have one honest conversation than a dozen shallow texts. This social filter doesn't make him less social. It makes his relationships way more meaningful. And funny enough, this new way of choosing who sticks around ends up bleeding into another area of life most people wouldn't expect. How he starts seeing romantic relationships and what he's actually looking for in a partner. Topic 3. He starts seeing dating completely differently. After 35, a lot of men figure out that what they used to call chemistry wasn't always compatibility. For a good chunk of their younger years, it's easy to mix up intensity with connection, thinking a relationship has to be full of highs and lows to feel exciting. Over time, though, that idea starts falling apart. They realize a healthy relationship isn't one that gives you anxiety every single day. It's one that brings stability, trust, and peace. And that shift in perspective completely changes how they pick a partner. In practice, that means qualities they used to overlook suddenly matter a lot more. A respectful conversation means more than a flawless appearance. Emotional intelligence becomes way more attractive than playing games. A woman who knows how to talk things through during a conflict earns way more respect than someone who turns every disagreement into an endurance test. A lot of men look back at past relationships and think, if I had the head on my shoulders I have now, I never would have stuck around for that. Not because they got pickier, but because they learned sometimes the hard way that peace of mind has no substitute. This new way of seeing relationships also changes how they react to red flags. With more experience, it gets a lot easier to spot behaviors they use to romanticize, like manipulation, excessive jealousy, or a lack of give and take. Instead of believing love fixes everything, they understand that respect, trust, and shared values are the real foundation of any lasting relationship. It's like finally learning the difference between fireworks and a fireplace. One wows you for a few seconds, the other keeps you warm for years. And once that clarity hits, another shift starts happening almost automatically. The ego stops running the show, making room for a kind of calm most younger men just can't wrap their heads around yet. Topic 4. He protects his peace more than his ego. One of the most subtle, and at the same time most powerful, changes that happens after 35 is that a lot of men stop feeling the need to win every argument. When you're younger, it's easy to believe being right is a way of showing strength. As the years go by, though, they figure out there's a huge difference between winning an argument and keeping your own peace. Not every jab deserves a comeback. Not every criticism needs a defense. And not every fight is worth the wear and tear it causes. This kind of maturity shows up in everyday situations. At work, he no longer burns energy trying to convince someone who's not interested in listening. In a relationship, he learns that listening can be way more powerful than cutting in to prove a point. Even in traffic or on social media, the reaction changes. Instead of turning every disagreement into a showdown, he does something that used to feel impossible. He just moves on. Not because he's turned passive or lost his personality, but because he's finally figured out that protecting his own peace beats feeding conflicts that go nowhere. That doesn't mean he just takes everything lying down. Quite the opposite. A mature man knows exactly when to speak up, and more importantly, when it's worth walking away. There's a line attributed to the Stoic philosopher Epictetus that sums this up well. Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of things. After 35, a lot of men start living by that idea without even realizing it. They understand that controlling their own reactions is one of the biggest shows of strength there is. And funny enough, once the ego stops sitting in the driver's seat, another shift kicks in. Even the definition of success starts to look completely different from what it was a few years back. If this video's already got you seeing a few things differently, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. We're aiming to hit 1,000 subscribers, and every single new sub makes a real difference in helping us keep making content like this. Deep, practical stuff to help men live with more clarity, confidence, and purpose. Topic 5. Success starts meaning something different. If there's one idea that changes profoundly after 35, it's the definition of success. For years, a lot of men believe success means climbing higher in their career, making more money, buying bigger stuff, and racking up visible wins. But eventually they run into an uncomfortable truth. You can hit a bunch of those goals and still feel like something's missing. That realization doesn't hit overnight. It creeps in slowly, as life shows you that some wins cost way too much when the price tag is your own health, your family, or your peace of mind. That's why priorities start to shift. A guy who used to work every weekend to bump up his income might start valuing a job that lets him have dinner with his kids, travel guilt-free, or simply wake up without feeling like he's only living to pay bills. That doesn't mean losing ambition. It means understanding that money's a tool, not a destination. Books like Die with Zero by Bill Perkins and The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel dig into exactly this shift in perspective. Building wealth makes sense, but it loses its point if you never have the time to actually enjoy it. Maybe the biggest proof of this shift is that a lot of men stop wanting to impress people with what they own and start investing in what nobody else can see. They sleep better, take better care of their health, strengthen their relationships, pick up new skills, and choose experiences over stuff. They figure out that freedom beats showing off, and that having control over your own time is a kind of wealth that never shows up on a bank statement. And it's exactly when this new vision of success starts to settle in that reality drops another reminder that's impossible to ignore. The body starts cashing in, no discount, on every choice made over the years. Topic 6. His body starts negotiating with him. For a lot of men, the body starts sending some pretty clear messages after 35. That rough night of sleep that used to get fixed with a strong coffee can now wreck the whole day. The intense workout that used to feel routine now needs way more recovery time. Bad eating habits, too much drinking, and stress leave marks that don't just fade away anymore. It's not that the body's failing. It's just finally cashing in a bill that's been sitting there unpaid for years. This phase tends to teach an important lesson. Consistency beats intensity, hands down. Instead of going hard once a week, it makes a way bigger difference to keep up a steady routine, even if it's more moderate. Daily walks, lifting 3 or 4 times a week, quality sleep, and preventive checkups stop being generic advice and become part of an actual strategy for keeping energy and quality of life intact. A lot of men also discover that small changes, like cutting back on ultra-processed food, watching alcohol intake, and prioritizing protein and whole foods, pay off in ways that go way beyond looks. They notice better mood, sharper focus, and more energy overall. The funny part is these limitations end up revealing an unexpected upside. Once a guy realizes he can't just burn through his body the way he did at 20, he starts treating it with a lot more respect. He understands that strength isn't about ignoring what your body's telling you. It's about building habits that keep you active for decades. Instead of chasing quick results, he starts thinking in terms of longevity, mobility, and independence. And almost without noticing, this new discipline sparks another quiet shift. Confidence stops depending on looks or on the need to impress anyone, and starts coming from the simple certainty that he can follow through on what he promises himself. Topic 7. Confidence becomes quiet. One of the most interesting shifts after 35 is that confidence changes shape. It stops being loud. A lot of men spend a good chunk of their younger years believing confidence means talking louder, showing off results constantly, or proving over and over that they're capable. With age, that need starts fading away. They figure out that whoever really knows their own worth doesn't feel any urgency to announce it every chance they get. Security stops being a performance and becomes something quiet instead. This shows up clearly in the small, everyday moments. A confident man doesn't need to cut off a conversation to prove he knows more than everyone else. He can admit he doesn't know something without feeling like it diminishes him. At work, he stops competing for recognition in every meeting and focuses on delivering solid, consistent results instead. In a relationship, he's not constantly trying to control every situation out of fear of losing his footing. That calm gives off a different kind of presence. Funny enough, confident people tend to talk less about themselves and show more genuine interest in others, because their self-worth no longer runs on constant validation. This quiet confidence also changes how he deals with mistakes and failure. Instead of seeing a setback as a threat to his identity, he starts treating it as part of the growth process. Books like Mindset by Carol Dweck help explain why mature people grow more when they accept they're always learning, instead of trying to look perfect. He realizes he doesn't need to win every argument to keep moving forward. He just needs to keep heading in the right direction, even when the road isn't perfect. And it's exactly this clarity that sets the stage for the deepest shift of all. Understanding there's a resource way more valuable than money, status, or recognition. And unlike those, once it's gone, you can never get it back. Topic 8. He finally understands that time is his most valuable asset. After 35, a lot of men go through a shift that redefines every other one on this list. They start seeing time in a completely different light. When you're younger, there's this feeling like there'll always be another shot, another year to start that project, another moment to take care of your health or spend time with family. But little by little, that illusion fades away. Not because life's over, but because it finally starts feeling real. Time stops being an endless resource and becomes the most valuable thing there is. This realization changes decisions that used to feel simple. A guy starts thinking twice before agreeing to a commitment that adds nothing to his life, staying in a job that's wrecking his quality of life, or sticking with relationships that just drain him emotionally. He learns that saying no doesn't always mean missing out. A lot of the time it means protecting something he can never get back. That's why more mature men tend to come across as more selective. They're not living in fear, they're living with intention. Every choice starts carrying a quiet question. Does this actually deserve a piece of my life? Maybe that's the biggest change nobody warns you about. After 35, the goal stops being just living more years and becomes living the years ahead of you better. He understands that success, health, relationships, and peace only matter if there's time left to actually enjoy them. It's like planting a tree knowing the shade that matters most might be the one that shelters the people he loves down the road. And once that awareness fully sets in, he realizes getting older doesn't mean losing possibilities. It means gaining the clarity to put his energy into what actually matters, leaving behind everything that was just taking up space in his life. Conclusion. Turning 35 doesn't mean the best part of life is behind you. For a lot of men, that's actually right when it starts for real. When the need for approval fades, relationships get more genuine, success takes on a new meaning, and time gets valued as the most precious resource there is. Decisions stop being driven by impulse and start reflecting who he truly wants to be. Now here's a question worth asking yourself honestly. Which of these 8 changes have you already noticed in your own life? Is there one you're still resisting? Sometimes all it takes is a small shift in perspective to transform how you work, how you connect with people, and how you enjoy each day. The point isn't trying to go back to being who you were at 25, but building the best version of who you can be going forward. If this video gave you something valuable, put at least one of these into action this week. Knowledge only makes a difference once it turns into action. And let us know in the comments, which of these changes hit closest to home or described exactly what you're going through right now. Your experience could help other men going through the same stage. And if you want to keep learning about male development, relationships, confidence, purpose, and the changes that really make a difference throughout life, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next videos. See you in the next one.